going on, YouTube? Let's rock and roll.
And here we go.
It's the Benjamin Dixon Show.
Your mission, should you choose to accept it, is
not merely peace in our time, but peace in all time.
I have no fear whatsoever of anybody or anything.
Did you think no one was watching?
Injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere.
your mission.
To boldly go where no man has gone before.
To reclaim the American dream.
To be given the right of human beings to be afforded equal rights and equal opportunities.
It's the Benjamin Dixon Show. If you're hearing his voice, you're hearing the voice of reason.
You certainly come to the right place.
Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to the Benjamin Dixon Show. I am your host, Benjamin Dixon. It is Monday, September 14, 2015, and we are back live on YouTube, and we are always as we have always been, streaming on Spreaker, our internet radio broadcast, and we want to thank you for joining us. We had a little spat with YouTube. It wasn't so much a spat with YouTube as much as it was a false flag. Someone reported one of our videos as being hate speech, and because of Google's algorithms and their automated process, they automatically revoked my live streaming privileges, and I had to make an appeal. Once that appeal, it took a few days, took like two days to get the repeal, and I wasn't going to file the appeal because I was, sort of tired of haggling and having to, deal with Google, and I wanted to find another platform. But I decided to just go ahead and do the appeal, and it took 2 days, and they cleared it up. That's the new wave of censorship, and that's the new wave of how conservatives, and I know I'm sure there's some liberals out there who are doing it, and if there's some liberals out there doing it, stop. And what I'm speaking of specifically are the people who will go and flag videos and content that they politically disagree with, and they will flag it so that Google's algorithms and Facebook's algorithms will automatically revoke access to those accounts and suspend accounts and all types of things. And you see this happening all the time. It is very prevalent in conservative circles, where you see people try to censor in that way. And so we were censored last week, but what's 1 week? 1 week is fine. We can handle 1 week. So we're back up live streaming on Facebook, on YouTube rather, and we are ready to rock and roll. It is a beautiful Monday here in Boston. A lot of exciting things happening over the news. I love presidential politics. I just do. That's just the thing I like the most. And I want to jump right into it with the polls from the polls that released over the weekend by YouGov and CBS News. I want to pull them up on the screen, and we'll discuss them here on the show, obviously. In New Hampshire, Bernie Sanders, as you can see, is ahead of Hillary Clinton. Bernie Sanders in New Hampshire is at 52% of likely Democratic primary voters. Hillary Clinton is at 30%. Joe Biden, who has not officially announced that he is going to run, is at 9%. And O'Malley, Webb, and Chafee get less than 3% combined. So that's a big shift and a big change for Bernie Sanders. And it is going to be a competitive race. There's another poll here. Let me back that picture up. We don't want to see James Blake just yet. The Iowa poll. Iowa, he was ahead by 1% according to Quinnipiac last week, but the CBS News YouGov poll has him at 43% ahead, and Clinton is at 33%. Joe Biden is at 10%, O'Malley at 5%, Chafee and Webb at 1%. So Sanders is on the move, and he's really, this is a competitive race. This is a competitive race, and anyone who thought it was going to be a coronation of anyone was highly mistaken. This will not be a coronation. Hillary Clinton will not walk into this without the fight of her life. And it looks as though Bernie Sanders and his team, they are bringing her they're bringing her a fight. Now, with regard to the poll standings are great for Iowa and New Hampshire. And of course, those are the first two primaries that are up. And then I believe South Carolina is after that. In regards to South Carolina, Bernie Sanders is down significantly, which leads me to leads me to the discussion of Cornel West, who was at Benedict College, a historically Black college and university in South Carolina. He was there over the weekend on the 12th, which was Saturday, I believe, and he was there campaigning on behalf of Bernie Sanders. So I want to play some clips of Cornel West campaigning for Bernie Sanders, and I want to play it, and I will stop and start and all that kind of good things. But I want to point out some key things that he's saying, and then I want to address some things that I feel like Bernie Sanders' team that they're doing right. They're definitely doing some things right, and I think that there's some other things that they should be doing to give them higher ground in South Carolina. But not only do I want to address the Bernie Sanders team, I want to also address the African-American vote in South Carolina and across the country, because as I was watching, I didn't get a chance to watch the video of Bernie Sanders, Cornel West introducing Bernie Sanders until this morning. It's been a tough weekend. My son was sick, and I had to be daddy doctor. So I really couldn't focus on much of anything this weekend with kids who were sick with strep throat. But I got a chance to watch it, and then I started reading the feedback from across the internet, different people, different thought leaders, and just random selection. Do a random sampling of opinions about the endorsement and the introduction of Bernie Sanders by Cornel West, and I've seen some good feedback, but I've also seen some negative feedback, and I want to address that probably in the second segment. But before I do that, I want to just run with this clip from Bernie Sanders, his rally at Benedict College, which is a historically Black college and university, HBCU, in South Carolina, where he is significantly behind Hillary Clinton. Here's the thing about primaries. Primaries can be easily influenced if you begin to galvanize a vote that does not normally participate in primaries. Most people wait until the general election to get involved, and then they become disillusioned because they feel like their vote doesn't count in the general election, when they have the opportunity to participate in the primaries and change the entire face of our campaign, of our election season. And that's the thing that's disingenuous and disturbing to me, are people who are complaining about the electoral process, who do not participate in the primaries. If you are disgusted with Hillary Clinton and you are disgusted with Jeb Bush, then you have the opportunity here in these primaries to get in there and make sure that Jeb Bush or Donald Trump or Hillary Clinton or whichever political ideology you subscribe to, you can make sure that your candidate gets in and their candidate does not, because the primaries are generally wide open. Primaries are generally participated in by the most active party players, which tend to be the establishment players. And I want to say all this before I even get to the video, because I want to address how Bernie Sanders can take South Carolina too. The way you take South Carolina and the way you change the face of this election is by galvanizing people who normally do not vote in primaries and letting them know that this is your opportunity to actually change this election. And if you change this election, then you are changing America, because this is a pivotal election. And I'm sure people say that every 4 years, but I want you to really understand the significance of this particular election. The significance is that we are on the deciding point, the decision point of status quo versus changing the paradigm. That's where we are. We are deciding whether or not we are going to keep on going in the same direction that we've been going in for the last 35 years, which has been a hard right, trickle-down economic paradigm, which has seen the gutting of the middle class, which has seen enormous unseen amounts of wealth amalgamated at the top. And we are faced with the status quo of keeping that exactly how it is. And I said this before, we have three choices before us: keeping the status quo, which is the devil we know, which would not be so terrifying if it was not so hard on the average American. And then you have the extreme right, which Donald Trump and all of his Republican counterparts represent. They want to take us even further. And I'll do in the last segment, I'm going to do Republicanomics. I'm not even naming it Reaganomics anymore. It's Republicanomics, because they have a twisted mindset with regard to economic policies that absolutely just don't work. All right. So that's that. And then you have changing in the right direction. We really wanted Barack Obama to be that change in the right direction. Barack Obama panned out to be a pretty status quo politician. Like him, love him. He's cool. I'm glad we had him. He's a great president. He's doing the best he can with what he has, but he's not a reformer. He did not change the paradigm. Bernie Sanders is the only candidate in this election so far who is significantly going to change the paradigm under which we live. So those are your three choices. And so in these primaries, it's important that you convey to the people those three choices. Do you like the way America is now? No. All right. So then you need a vote. Do you like the dream and the pipe dream that the Republicans are selling their people and trying to sell America? No. Then you need to vote. And so if you don't like the way America is now, then I don't see that it's possible for you to vote for Hillary Clinton and expect something to change. Hillary Clinton has not proven to be that dynamic progressive who is going to reverse course. If she is anything like her husband, she's going to practice triangulation, where she's going to, just like Barack Obama did, try to get as much as he can done without really changing the status quo. So if you don't like what America is right now, if you don't like the fact that you can't get a home with a $40,000 and $50,000 a year job, if you don't like the fact that your interest rates are so high on your student loans, if you don't like the fact that it is so difficult to have the American dream right now because we have stopped investing in the middle class, if you don't like that paradigm, then there is really only one direction that you can vote. And if you don't vote, then you can't complain about it, obviously. So those are the choices that are on the table. And I think if we begin to convey that to the people in South Carolina, and we start talking to the people who don't normally vote, and we start mobilizing them and letting them know that this is not the general election, the primary is your opportunity to change America, then I think we will start seeing the polls shift in Bernie Sanders' favor in South Carolina as well. And I think it's important because one of two things is going to happen. Either Bernie is going to win, which is going to be good for America, or it's going to beat Hillary Clinton to the left so much that she has no choice but to sever ties with Wall Street. She has no choice but to give back prison industrial complex money. She has no choice but to actually be a progressive, because the American electorate is saying we don't want a status quo establishment leader anymore. We need true progressivism. Now, with all that being said, I want to play a couple of clips from Brother Cornel West at Benedict College. Let's make sure I have this all worked out right. Hold tight. Let's see how this goes.
We are concerned with unarmed truth, and the condition of truth is always to allow suffering to speak. And if you're concerned about truth in politics, you have to push out the big money. If you're concerned about truth in politics, you have to keep track of the poor children. You have to keep track of the elderly and the orphans and the widows and the working people whose wages are stagnated. And you have to keep track of the 1% who now own 42% of the wealth and in the richest nation of the world. 22% of children, 40% of black children, brown children, red children still live in poverty. That's a moral disgrace and spiritually profane. That's what Brother Bernie Sanders stands for. That's why we are here. Young people have already picked up on the message. Oh, if the election could be held right now and only those who voted would have to be 25 or younger, he'd be president at the moment. The older folk that need to wake up. Are you concerned about the decrepit schools? Are you concerned about dilapidated housing? Are you concerned about the massive unemployment and underemployment that are not reflected in the statistics because they don't count those folk who are not looking for work or part-time workers? Are you concerned about the fact that there's trillions of dollars overseas that big bankers have and big corporations have, but they tell us they don't have enough money for schools that can educate our children. Oh, yeah.
All right, let me stop there for a second. All right, so that's Cornel West. And he's giving an introduction of Bernie Sanders at Benedict College. As you can see, the demographic there is, well, Benedict College is a historically black college. So it's not disingenuous to have a backdrop of all black people because it is a HBCU, which is probably each HBCU in the United States is probably 99% black. So well played, Bernie Sanders. We don't want you to go to a construction site and have all black people behind you. Let's just keep it real all the way across the board, right? Wherever you go, let's put a representation of where you are on stage. And I think that was a good representation because Benedict College, I went to HBCU. I went to Bethune-Cookman University in Daytona Beach, Florida, hell Wildcats. And it was 99% black. And we had maybe two people, it was a small school. So we had maybe one or two people from not even white Americans. We had like people from Russia and Yugoslavia and different places like that. But anyway, it's important that you listen to what Cornel West is saying. And he's communicating it kind of in an esoteric way, but that's just how Cornel West talks, right? They may need to get someone who can speak it a little more plainly. But if you listen to what he's saying, he's regurgitating the same things that he's been saying for many, many years. And it is the same thing that Bernie Sanders has been saying for many, many years. And that is that if you are really concerned about the condition of poor people in America and the amount of youth that are raised in poverty, the amount of African American youth, which is disproportionately represented in poverty. If you're concerned about it, then two things have to happen. You have to get money out of politics, and you have to look at the top 1%, where 42% of America's wealth is concentrated in the top 1%. That means that there's only 48% left. I just ran the numbers again in my head. I'm like, wait, 48%. There's only 48% left that actually, and I feel so horrible right now because now I'm second guessing my numbers. Somebody read, is it 52? Is it 50, 58% or 48%? Who cares? I do politics. And I won't even tell you guys that I actually had a majored in math. But anyway, I digress. All of this wealth that is concentrated in the top 1%, and that leaves the rest of America, 99% of America, with a pittance of what America's wealth really is. That is a shame. And you cannot talk about the conditions of poor people in America, and you cannot talk about the conditions of African Americans in America without talking about the disparity of wealth. Now, I know there are a lot of people who think that we have to address this only from a perspective of white supremacy and racism, but you cannot talk about racism in America without talking about economic disparities. It's impossible. I want to pull up a quote by, and then we're going to go to a quick break, and then I'll take this call that's calling in. I want to pull up a quote by Cornel West, and this was a quote that I saw in Mike magazine, Mike.com, and it puts it so perfectly. It puts it, boom, boom, boom. Where's that quote? Here it is. Cornel West said, "It's very important to put pressure on all progressive politicians, no matter what color, but we should always acknowledge that the issue of not just economic injustice, but class injustice is so fundamental in terms of wrestling with the vicious legacy of white supremacy." And then there's this quotable moment here. "I can't conceive of talking about struggling against white supremacy without talking about class. I cannot conceive of talking about struggling against white supremacy without talking about class." So this is from Cornel West, and I can't agree with him more. It is impossible to talk about white supremacy without talking about class. All right, folks, I'm going to take my first break, and then I'll pick up that call. When I come back, I want to dig in a little more what Cornel West said, and I want to talk about class, white supremacy, how that plays into the James Blake incident in New York, as well as Republicanomics. We'll be back after this break, and I wake my brain up.
When you're ready to lose weight, why count, track, and worry over every meal? Jenny Craig makes it simple. Just walk into a neighborhood Jenny Craig center or give us a call. You'll meet your dedicated personal consultant who helps you reach your goals. Together, you'll pick out delicious Jenny Craig foods that you'll love and design a menu that fits your life. And the best part is that you can get started losing weight right away. Don't wait any longer to take advantage of our best offer ever. Call 1-800-JENNY20 or visit jennycraig.com.
This is the sound of salmonella gyrating on your undercooked chicken. And it looks like Mom might be taking it out a little early. Don't let salmonella get funky with your chicken. On average, 1 in 6 Americans will get a foodborne illness this year. So use a thermometer to cook each type of meat to the right temperature. Keep your family safe at foodsafety.gov. Brought to you by the USDA, HHS, and the Ad Council.
On the next episode of Recipes for Disaster.
I'm making beef sliders for my friend Sandy. Nana taught me to always pull meat off the grill early so it's extra juicy.
Use a food thermometer to ensure ground beef is 160 degrees, or you could make people really sick. Sandy didn't think twice about the slider she ate until yoga class, when a nasty case of food poisoning turned her downward-facing dog into upward-moving lunch. Watch Recipes for Disaster at foodsafety.gov and learn the steps Maria unwittingly leaves out. Brought to you by the USDA, HHS, and the Ad Council.
When I grow up, I want to be a new pair of blue jeans. When I grow up, I want to be a kid's first computer. Warm fleece on a cool day. I want to be a bike that races around the country. I want to be a bench on a forest trail. When I grow up, I don't want to be a piece of garbage. And if you recycle me, I won't be.
Give your garbage another life. Recycle. Learn how at iwanttoberecycled.org. Brought to you by Keep America Beautiful and the Ad Council.
Welcome back to the Benjamin Dixon Show.
Boy.
If you're hearing his voice, you're hearing the voice of reason.
Welcome back. Oh, man. Folks, I am laughing. I have been laughing at myself through this entire break. I knew when I said 48%, I knew when I said it was wrong. But sometimes you just won't admit to yourself that you were loud and wrong. So, hey, all I can say is the simple things confound me. It's not I can tell you the derivative of just about any function, but sometimes it's the simple mathematics that gets you. So no shame on my part. It is what it is. I have a caller. Caller, what is your name, comment, and or question?
Comment.
Go for it.
I'm going to comment on Republicanomics.
Okay. Yeah, we're heading into that section in a few minutes, so go ahead.
Okay. Well, he said some stuff already. Do you want me to go into it now? This is actually my first time calling.
Okay. What's your name?
Show. Oh, John Maloney.
John, thanks for the call. What's on your mind with regard to Republicanomics?
Well, he's saying, he makes it sound like if some people have a certain amount of wealth, there's less wealth around for other people to have. And wealth doesn't work that way, right? So like the economy could grow as large as it wants to grow. It could shrink. It's not a certain amount of wealth out there, and then we just get what we could get. We actually create the wealth itself. And you can see this like during the 90s, right? Bill Gates, Dell, they made huge amounts of money, massive amounts of money.
Mm-hmm.
And the economy grew and everyone was richer. That was like one of the best times for the middle class. The other best time for the middle class was actually during the Reagan years. I don't know, he doesn't mention that. He makes it sound like the past 30 years are all bad, when really it was just from Bush till now.
You really, okay, let's back up, John.
So anyway, that's the issues I want to talk about.
Okay, so let me ask you this. Okay, so you think that the best time, one of the other best times for the American middle class was the Reagan years, when we saw post 1981, we saw a complete shifting of the wealth in America, where the top 1%, and at the time we didn't regard them as the top 1%, right? That granted, that's a new jargon that we're going with now, but we saw where the middle class began to get squeezed out. There is a share of wealth in America, yes, you can create new wealth, but as wealth is created, how that wealth is distributed and how that wealth is spread out amongst the 350 million
people. It's not distributed in America. It's earned in America. It's created, and then the people who create it keep it. Like when Bill Gates went and created that massive amount of wealth by starting Microsoft. He had that. He paid it to his employees. He spends it in the economy.
No doubt, no doubt, and we don't disagree there.
And those businesses go and create it. It's not like distributed by like some, some group.
Obviously,
who are like,
I
take this amount.
Hold on, John. Let me finish my point. I mean, no one is that there's no misconception there, right? The misconception that I think you have is that there is a equal opportunity to obtain wealth in America. No one is saying that there.
No. I never said that. No, don't accuse me of that now.
All right. Well, hang on.
I'm just saying certain periods of people more opportunity than others. The Reagan years and the
Reagan years were not
good examples of that.
Okay, hang on.
The Reagan years,
John,
really fast.
John.
Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Yes, John. The Reagan years, I don't know what data you're pulling from, but the Reagan years were not good to the middle class. Everything post the Reagan years was not good. And with regard to the amount of wealth that is in the hands of the middle class, there is an opportunity for people to create wealth, but it is not an equal opportunity for people to create wealth in the United States of America. There's no. And then if you look at this, answer me this. Do you know that there is inside of capitalism that the middle class is not a natural occurring phenomenon?
Oh, yes, it is. There's a middle class in every capitalist society.
No, the middle class. Hang on. The middle class is not a natural occurring phenomenon. The middle class began to develop in the United States in a significant way.
That's the median income. That's not the average.
Hang on, John. We're not going to talk over each other, John.
Family size went down.
John, either we're gonna take turns and go back and forth, or we're not gonna have the conversation, because it's not a conversation if we're talking over each other.
I'm just saying we gotta stick to the facts, because your next argument was based on a false premise.
What was my next argument? You're predicting my argument.
No, you said that the middle class hasn't been doing good since Reagan got in office, and Reagan
the middle class
an increase in the median.
John, how much do you make? Just, I mean, we don't know you. We don't know what city you're in. So feel free to say no. But you're with a cover of anonymity. How much do you make? 60,000. What city do you live in? No, okay. Don't tell us what city. Do you live in a metropolitan area or do you live in a rural area?
No, I don't. It's cheap where I live.
It's cheap where you live.
In Florida.
It's okay. And there are some parts now. In fairness to Florida, there's some parts of Florida where 60,000 will almost have you in poverty. Right? If you live in some of the metropolitan area, downtown Miami, of course, you're not going to make it on 60,000. If you live in Opelika, then yeah, you'll be fine. But the problem is not that. The problem is not simply that there's wealth to be made and wealth to be had. The problem is that if you don't have access to capital, if you don't have access, if you cannot get outside of the poverty trap, then you are not going to ever have the opportunity to get access to that capital. So
you're right on that.
We're not saying
you're right on that, but here's the thing.
Now, hang on. Now this is the most important part, John. The most important part is, hang on, John.
Let me give
you the most important part. I have to give you the most important part, and then I'll give you the floor. The most important part in that is that once you are born inside a certain economic strata, you only have access besides education. Now, right? Education is a great education is a great way out.
I mean, I know what you mean.
John. Exactly. So this is what I'm saying. Without programs, without safety nets, without opportunities to get out of poverty, then you will never be able to have a conversation about creating wealth. Forget about creating wealth. Like there are exceptional people.
You're right. There's a lot of people
create?
Whose talents aren't being used to the full extent.
Exactly.
And
that's what we're talking about now.
There's a lot of people who how do you feel about vouchers for schools? Give parents because I taught for a while in an inner city school, and
ditto that.
The teachers didn't give a damn about those kids, but the kids had talent. I mean, there were talented kids there. It broke my heart. I mean,
we don't get off track. So we don't get off track. I'll be glad to talk about vouchers because I have a lot to say about vouchers. But I want to get back on track.
Yeah, I kind of changed subject on you there.
But here's the main point I'm saying. Without the programs, without assistance, without safety nets, and I'm just going to use the word, without redistributing the wealth, It is impossible for someone who is born in poverty to get access to the capital necessary to create wealth. Now, you will always have the exceptional few who can do it, right? You always have the Oprah Winfrey's who was born in abject poverty, just ridiculously poor and became a billionaire. But we're not talking about the exceptional. We're talking about the average American. And since 1981, we have seen the stripping down, the reduction of what we spend in education. We see the stripping down of all of our programs. We've seen just the gutting of everything that would help create the middle class and sustain the middle class for the average American. Now, people like you, people like me, we might be just above average, and so we'll do fine. But what about all of the other 100 million people in America who are not overly exceptional? We're leaving them to the wolves.
Well, let me, basically you need to, the thing to do is increase opportunity, though. I think distributing income so that some people can invest, is that the thing? Is not going to work. And giving it to the government to go around investing. I mean, come on, these people are ridiculous.
Not to invest. Listen, the most expansionary part, the most expansionary period we've had. Hang on, let me give you this. Let me drop this on you. The most expansionary period that we've had.
Pay attention to it like a business owner would. The thing to do there would be to reduce regulations. I mean,
John,
you know how
hang
people
on,
are getting hit with regulations.
John,
you can't even start a radio station these days.
John, we can't run off. We can't chase a whole bunch of different things. Let's focus on the original conversation. I'll be glad to have you back to discuss any of these things in depth. But we're talking about the notion that that you asserted that the middle class did great underneath Ronald Reagan, and that's just not the case.
Did.
That's not. We saw. Let's not mistake things. Here's
I
the
want to
mistake.
just add one thing to that.
Go ahead.
I notice you touch on a lot of racial issues on the show, and
well, hang on. Not if you're going to go off on a tangent. Not if you. It needs to be in.
And Reagan, during the Reagan term, that was the first time in history that blacks closed the income gap with whites. They closed the income gap with whites throughout the entire Reagan term, and then the second time they did it was during Clinton's term. These are the economics I'm talking about.
All right, let's go back to this economic. Now, I think I know exactly where you're coming from. You're looking at the data that you're looking at is representing the median income. That we saw the median income increase in the 80s. We saw the median income increase over the last 35 years. Yes, median income has increased, but the number of Americans who have access to obtaining the median income, or even to move from. Do you know how difficult? If we talk about the Gini coefficient,
I'm not talking about the average income. Median income is what the middle person in America makes. Like
absolutely, but it's
both
still
ends, and they find out who's in the middle.
Absolutely, I understand. I completely understand.
Over half of Americans are making the median income or more, and then half of Americans are making.
But there is a huge drop off. There's a huge drop off after the median income. There's also, here's the thing, the opportunity to move. We're not talking about.
I'll give you that.
We're not just talking about the who's doing fine where they are. We're talking about that opportunity to move to the next level. So you have half of America that is below 50,000. Let's say right now $50,000 is the median income. You have half of America that's below that, and a significant amount that are in poverty in the United States. Now let's forget about doing a program to get them out of poverty. Let's talk about their kids. The opportunity to move from one generation of poverty into the next middle class, that has reduced significantly over the last 30 years. And that's what we're talking. We're not talking about taking Bill Gates' wealth and saying he makes too much, let's distribute.
Oh, no, those programs have gotten way bigger.
Those programs have been, John, I appreciate your call, John, and I definitely want you to call back, but I have to get back on topic. Those programs have been gutted. Those programs have been gutted over the years. And we see this in education. You brought up education. You brought up, and John, you can do some more after the show is over. Feel free to call back, or I can call you. Just hit me on YouTube and let me know. I definitely like to finish conversations, but I got to move on. We've seen it with education. Cuts in education, cuts in in policing agencies and firefighting. We've seen people be laid off tremendously over the last 35 years. And these are average middle class jobs. Now, if they can't sustain average middle class jobs, how are they going to help their kids get out of poverty? All right. Getting back on topic, because we can debate about economics all day long and actually love it. So John, if you want to call back, we can, but let's do it after the show. I want to go back to Cornel West and play a little bit more of his show. Of his introduction to Bernie Sanders. Here we go.
Concerned about those bankers that can get nearly every loan for 3.5 years, but when it comes to student loans, oh, we could have just the same rates at the bankers. Has to hit. Of course, you all know that I come from a people who've been terrorized and traumatized and stigmatized for 400 years. Vicious legacy of white supremacy that tells black people, oh, you ought to be afraid and intimidated and scared. You're less beautiful, you're less intelligent, you're less moral. And then I can hear Sly Stone saying, Stan, you've been sitting much too long. There's a permanent crease in your right and wrong. Bernie Sanders is calling for a political revolution predicated on a moral and spiritual awakening. We've got to straighten our backs up. Come together across color, across class, across sexual orientation, across region. That's what Bernie Sanders' campaign is all about. Get in on the movement.
All right, let me stop it right there. Here we go with Cornel West at Benedict College. And he is communicating the messages of Bernie Sanders, and he's doing it. The core message of Bernie Sanders, if you could summarize it, would be equal opportunity. And John, in the last call, had the misconception that we're talking about taking someone's wealth and busting their wealth up. No, we're saying that there were structural. Wait, no, this is what we're saying. And then two things that we're saying. One, there are structural inequities inside of capitalism, period. It has been demonstrated historically. Wealth begets wealth. Capital begets capital. Those with capital are able to create more wealth. There is no problem with capitalism if you have capital. There is absolutely nothing wrong with capitalism if you have capital. But if you don't have access to capital, gaining access to capital is the most difficult thing, because capital wants to go after people with capital. It is easy, plain and simple, for a person who is already wealthy. It is so easy for them to get any type of loan that they need to make an investment like this. But someone in the middle class, it is that much more difficult for them to get access to capital, to go to college, to put their kids through college, to buy a home, to do any type of investment in any of their dreams. So if capital is fleeing the middle class, how can we say that there's an economic opportunity for them to create wealth? How can a person in the middle class create wealth when all of their income is sucked out just for living? That is the difference. That is what Bernie Sanders is talking about. And we're not talking about the government just coming and writing us checks. If you want to talk about the government just writing you checks, think about the handouts that George Bush gave to circa 2005, where he had checks just written from the IRS to everyone, right? His stimulus package, right? This was pre-recession stimulus that he was engaging in, right? We're not talking about the government just writing checks. We're talking about our tax dollars actually accomplishing things for us that would help benefit us. Case in point, a person who's making $60,000 a year, they can't do a whole lot, especially if all of their out of all of their tax dollars that are going out the window, none of it is coming back to benefit them besides the infrastructure. Well, hell, GE benefits off of our infrastructure. Microsoft benefits off of our infrastructure. So that doesn't count. But in terms of programs that would help them with childcare, with healthcare, with interest rates on their student loans, we are left out here with the wolves, and we are left to fend for ourselves. And we are spending all of our wealth, not even wealth, all of our income just to survive. How can anyone create wealth if they're spending everything they have just to survive? And we're not even talking about people in poverty right now, right? And this is what Cornel West was saying. He's like, we're not just talking about the people who are born in poverty. We are talking about people in the middle class who are looking for opportunities to just do better than living paycheck to paycheck. $60,000 a year, this in 2015, If you're living by yourself, it's just enough to live paycheck to paycheck unless you're living in a rural area, and then you're doing okay. But it's difficult to find a job making $60,000 a year in a rural area without driving an hour from Macomb, Mississippi to Jackson, Mississippi. I know the rural areas very well. So this is what Bernie Sanders is saying. He's saying if we're going to be paying tax dollars, should not these tax benefits benefit the middle class and the poor? The people who are contributing in these tax dollars? I don't care. We are paying. Listen, I am very middle class, and I am paying a monthly bill to the IRS. People who are living in poverty, they may not pay income taxes, but they have all of their wealth all of their income, if any, is completely extracted and utilized in this economic system without them getting any benefit other than survival and subsistence. We are trying to move beyond the point where the poor and the middle class can simply survive. And that has been the economic paradigm since 1981, since Ronald Reagan. The middle class is simply struggling to survive. Back in the 40s and 50s, when we created the middle class, when we invested, and then, of course, we can talk about the racial dynamics of it, where there was no investments in the African-American community. And if it was so much less. But let's table that into the next section. But once we created the middle class, once we came out of the Gilded Age, once we came out of and we actually had labor laws where children were not exploited for labor, once we created middle class with the GI Bill, investments in our communities, investments in infrastructure, investments in human capital, then we saw people who were able to live and I hate to use this phrase, but the American dream, and actually own a home and do something that was not looking to become a billionaire, but simply looking to leave something to their children. If you look at the average American right now, the average American does not have $1,000 in savings. Tell me, what can that person do who's working 40 hours a week, who has a degree, who went to college? What can that person do with $1,000 of savings for the next generation? And now here's the caveat to that. Here's the fine point on that. If capital chases after capital, then how could that person who only has $1,000 get beyond their point of just surviving? Better yet, how can that person ever create wealth if they never have access to anything more than their paycheck that is going out of the window every single month? All right, folks, when I come back, we might as well stick with it. We're dealing with Reaganomics, Republicanomics, and we'll deal with it a little bit more. You can join the conversation, 857-600-0518.
You're tuned in to The Benjamin Dixon Show. Join the conversation, 857-600-0518.
Looking for the right business opportunity? Need the right product, the right marketing plan, and the absolute best training in the world? Well, look no further. The Elite Team. Every leader in time excels. They believe the key ingredients in becoming successful in life and in business are just a keystroke away. Go to www.eliteteamsite.com. That's www.eliteteamsite.com. The Elite Team has a system in place that will move you closer to achieving your goals and dreams. Visit www.eliteteamsite.com or TonyFlemingEnterprises.com today.
College is important, but it can also be expensive. College Planning Services is a group of educators, administrators, counselors, and other licensed professionals that work together to provide the necessary services, networks, and information to reach students that are serious about getting a college education. College Planning Services partners with financial institutions, corporate sponsors, and other major players in the global market to strategize in building a pool of information regarding financial aid, scholarships, and funding information to assist students in preparing to access the essential resources to build upon their path to an educational future. Learn more at collegeplanningtoday.com and let us help you start your college career.
Do you want to take your business to the next level? Ultimate Business Solutions provides the support you need to increase your customer base and sell more products and services online. Specializing in graphic arts, web development, and internet marketing, Ultimate Business Solutions creates the face of your business. If you're looking for a custom logo, dynamic website, or popping marketing material, call Ultimate Business Solutions today at 404-704-2197 or visit www.ultimatebizsolutions.com. Ultimate Business Solutions. Let us create your future.
Do you have tax issues, owe back taxes, or need tax relief? Contact L&B Tax Service today. L&B offers you over 15 years of expertise and first-class tax service for individuals, professionals, and business owners. With nationwide service, you can easily find a location near you. Contact one of our tax professionals through our website, lbtaxservice.com. That's www.lbtaxservice.com. L&B Tax Service Incorporated. Tax professionals that you can trust. You've tuned in to the Benjamin Dixon Show.
All right, folks. Welcome back. All right. Let's see. Caller, what is your name, comment, and or question? Caller, you're live on the air. What is your name, comment, and or question?
Oh, okay. I'm sorry. I didn't know you were talking to me. I just wanted you to comment about the Nixon years and going forward. A lot of that had to do with the educational system. If you notice, back in the 60s and the 70s, even a lot of people just weren't college material. But what was going on at that point was that we had other things that they could do. Remember, in high school, you had shop classes. So guys that weren't what you would call scholars or whatever, but were great with their hands. They could, they could learn things like plumbing, carpentry, electricity, or whatever. And from let's call it a less than middle class upbringing, they could take those skills and push themselves into the middle class. Absolutely. Now, if you look at the high schools, none of that is there. Okay, they killed all the shop classes. Hell, they even killed gym classes. You don't get gym, every week. Right. So, education basically, it has been almost destroyed for anybody, who, absolutely can't make it, to get a degree and has a financial wherewithal, to afford college. And even then, you have so many college graduates out there now that, that are looking for jobs that even they're working for McDonald's. So, what's that saying about what happened?
Exactly. Exactly. I couldn't agree with you more. So this all stems from the gutting of all of the investments, and you may not want to call them programs, but they were investments in the middle class, investments in the average American. There will always be the exceptional few who could be born in abject poverty, who could be born in the hood, and despite everything that's surrounding them, they can rise up to the foam up to the top and become great billionaires and great leaders or whatever the case may be. But the question is, are we making America for the exceptional? Or are we making America for the average American? And because I think we have a moral responsibility to make it for the average American, because the exceptional benefit from the average American. There is not one exceptional person in the United States of America who is not directly deriving their wealth from the average American. And so if the wealth can be made on the backs of the average American, then America must be made for the average American. You can do fine if you're brilliant. But in America right now, if you're just the average Joe and you can fix cars really well, then you're going to have to live with 3 other guys who can fix cars really well, because the money is just no longer there in those industries. And there's, even if you could get that type of education now, like you're saying, you're speaking to the fact that those levels of education, that type and form of education has been gutted because our priorities have changed in America, and it has not been investment in human capital.
Exactly, and that 1%, who do they really owe their allegiance and their responsibility to? Back in the day, an employer used to have a certain form of responsibility for his employees. Now, there's no longer any responsibility. You're more a number today than you ever have been. All he's responsible for is that bottom line and to his shareholders. And everybody else, basically, can go to hell.
Thanks so much for your call. I didn't get your name. What's your name, sir?
It's Brian.
Brian, thanks so much for your call. We appreciate it. Anyone else wants to join the conversation, 857-600-0518. And here's the funny thing about the conversation, ladies and gentlemen. What we're talking about is not the difference between Bernie Sanders and a Jeb Bush. What we're talking about is also the difference between Bernie Sanders and Hillary Clinton. Hillary Clinton's paradigm is the status quo. And so the things that we're discussing, it's not even, how can I say this? It's not even in the purview of Hillary Clinton unless we force it to be. And I think that's the shift that we're seeing in America, where Americans are now saying, either you are going to be a true progressive and make the investments in the middle class that we saw taking place underneath FDR, or you're no longer going to be able to call yourself a true progressive. I hit my volume down kind of low on that part, but that's where we are in America. And so I think that's where we see a dynamic shift, because everyone knows intuitively, they know it at a very new internal level, that something is not right when you can have a master's degree, work 40 hours a week, and work a second job and still be struggling to survive. That's because our interests have not been in the middle class. It has been in whatever it takes to get that profit, that bottom line. And that always necessitates increasing prices as much as we can and decreasing the cost of labor. That is your supply and demand. That is economics 101. That is the core of capitalism. The core of capitalism will always seek the highest rent possible and always seek the lowest labor possible. And that is why we see the outsourcing of jobs, so that they can get slave labor in countries where they don't have labor laws. And so there is a natural competition. There is natural enmity between capital and labor. There are diatribes. There are books, libraries of books about the competition between capital and labor. And it is a competition because capital always wants the cheapest amount of labor to increase profits. So there is a vested interest in every organization to pay you the lowest amount possible. That does not make them evil. That actually just makes them good business people. That's the only difference between me and a lot of other progressives. I don't see capitalists as evil. I see them as doing their jobs. And I see the government as standing idly by while they do what's in the best interest for their company, but it's not in the best interest for the Americans, for the American population. And so I don't look at capitalists and think and business owners and Michael Dell and Bill Gates and people who have started billion-dollar industries. I don't look at them as evil. I look at them as doing whatever the government is going to allow them to do, which is going to be in the best interest of their shareholders, but not necessarily in the best interest of the average American. And if we continue to allow all of these moves to be made, which are in the benefit of a small group to the detriment of the average American, then we are going to be left without a middle class, because that is the natural state of capitalism. Now, I'm going to bring the scholarly article. I've been talking about bringing it. I'm going to bring the scholarly article. This is not something from Forbes, right? I'll bring the article tomorrow, and I will be live on the air. I'm going to do 5 days a week this week and see how it feels again. But I will bring the article that shows you two things. One, that capital begets capital. Capital will always go to the people who already have capital. And it's in the very rare instances that someone who was born without access to any capital can gain capital, which is investments, right? And the ability to invest, the funds to invest, the equipment and that's necessary to invest. All those are different forms of capital. It's very rare that someone who was born without it can gain access to it to create new wealth. And if that's not possible in America, then what the hell is America for? If you have to be born rich already to get access to money to sustain your wealth, then what is it for? Especially because every single industry benefits off of the middle class, everyone, and the poor, everyone. Walmart would not be the billion-dollar industry almost by itself without the middle class and the poor. Apple would not be the company that it is without the middle class and even some poor people who have iPhones, which, you know, I wouldn't have one if I wasn't making the middle class income, right? You know, not talking about the decisions, but still, that's besides the point. But there's not an industry. And then let's go one step further. We're not even just talking about, ladies and gentlemen, we're not just talking about the free market industries, right? We're talking about organizations that take money directly from the government contractors who used to get no bid contracts, who have an abundance of waste. When they say they quote a project at 50 million and then it comes in actually at 75 million. You know, I know governmental contractors who talk about the exorbitant waste that they see in these contracts. And this is money that's being taken directly from the American. This is not money wealth that they created. See, that's misconception number one. This is not just money that was created. This is money that was taken from us and redistributed to defense contractors and other types of contractors who then waste those funds. And the government is not doing its job of oversight, of overseeing it, as well as making sure that the investments that we make benefit the average American. That is what Bernie Sanders is saying. That's essentially what Cornel West was saying, but he wasn't saying it in plain language. And I think you just need somebody to say it in plain language. If tax dollars come out of our check, then those tax dollars need to directly benefit us, period. I should not be paying the government tax dollars every single month and still have to pay a mortgage in childcare when in every other major developed country in the world, childcare is a part of their society. Things like that. Those are the things that make all the difference. And caller, I'm sorry I missed your call. You can call back 857-600-0518. I only have a few more minutes. And we'll talk about whatever you want to talk about when you call. But this is the last thing I want to say. And this is, and to everyone who's a Bernie supporter, I want to give this caveat at this disclaimer at the beginning. What I'm getting ready to say, I don't want you to repeat unless you're African American. And I know that's harsh, but it's just in the best interest of Bernie Sanders that you do not repeat this unless you're African American. There are people who are disgusted with Cornel West, and they're disgusted with Black progressives, and they're disgusted with anybody who would endorse any presidential candidate because they feel like endorsing any presidential candidate or supporting any presidential candidate is a type of selling out. And here's the thing. This is what I'm going to say to them. If you're not ready to talk about economic disparities in America, then you're not ready to fix white supremacy, period. Now, I'm going to say this again. Don't tweet that out. If you can tweet it and you can quote me, but be careful if you're not a Black supporter of Bernie, just because it could backfire, right? And I love all y'all, but I just be real. Some conversations you can only have with yourselves, with your family members. And you know what I'm saying. I don't have to give any more caveats. If you're not ready to tackle the very core root of white supremacy, the very core impetus behind racism, if you're not ready to talk about economic disparity and the distribution of wealth, the structure and the manner in which we play capitalism in the United States of America, if you're not prepared to talk about that, then you're not serious about tackling white supremacy, because the purpose of white supremacy has always been the extrapolation of wealth from as many people as possible. The tool to accomplish that has always been racism. Racism was the tool to keep poor white people from ever paying attention to the fact that the problems in their life were really an economic problem. They turned around and started looking at Black people and Hispanics and seeing them as the problem, because that was so much easier. That was so easy. They can control. How do you think they get people who need welfare, who need food stamps, who need Obamacare in Mississippi and Alabama, Owsley, Kentucky, all of these places that are so desperately in need of assistance from the government and who are directly burdened by the current structure? How do you think they get them to completely ignore that reality? The Southern strategy, racism, and white supremacy. So again, I want to say to every Black thought leader, every person in Black Lives Matter, every person who's dismissing Bernie Sanders, every person who's dismissing the entire electoral process in general because you feel like talking about politics, it means that you're selling out. I'm not going to call you ignorant. I'm just going to say you're not serious about tackling white supremacy. Because unless you're willing to talk about economic disparity and economic exploitation, you will never remedy and rectify the ills of white supremacy in America. And with that, I have 5 seconds to bid you adieu. I'll see you next time.
And until that moment comes, when we, the Americans, are able to accept the fact that on that continent we are trying to forge a new identity for which we need each other, that I am not a ward of America. I am one of the people who built the country. Until this moment.
That we are brothers. It's not a question of Jews or Christians or Muslims. We're all in the same boat.
We need each other.
Love is a condition so powerful. It may be that which holds the stars in the firmament.
Until this moment.
Love.
Until this moment.
Love.
Until this moment.
I come to you today to say that we can build a newer and better nation. I say we can do so, that we must do so, and that we will do so.
You've tuned in to The Benjamin Dixon Show. Visit us online at www.thebenjamindixonshow.com.
All right, folks, YouTube, thanks so much for joining me. Make sure you subscribe. Make sure you share the video. I will be breaking this up into segments and posting it later after I go for my daily walk, try to lose some weight and live a little longer. I want you to go to facebook.com/The Benjamin Dixon Show, like us, and submit for a chance to win a copy of my book. There's something more important than all of that. Oh, yes. I will be on tomorrow. I will be on Thursday, 5 days a week. And if anyone wants to debate and call in, after the show is usually best. That way we can go and chase any red herring you want to chase, but you can always do that. And I will see you guys later.